Welcome or welcome back to the Literary Lori YouTube channel. I'm welcome back to the Literary Lori YouTube channel. I'm Literary Lori, aka Lori L. Tharps. If you love to read books or write books that center the lives of Black people and other people of color globally, then you are in the right place, because that is why I created this YouTube channel, to share my love for all things bookish and literary that have a colorful bent. I also created this channel to share my personal journey going from being a journalist and a journalism professor, an award-winning nonfiction author based in the United States, to being that girl who decides to chase her dreams, move to the south of Spain so she could become a novelist and live a global literary life. However, this video is not about me. This video is about a famous Black author born in February that is part of my series for the entire month of February, where I'm sharing the life and literary lessons from great Black writers born in February. Yes, instead of celebrating Black History Month, I'm celebrating Black Literary History Month. And I am so happy that you're here because you want to learn about an incredible Black writer born in February. So let's get to today's special author. So today we are on day 11, February 11th, and we are talking about the one, the only Maryse Condé. She's French, so I am not putting the French spin on the pronunciation of her name. Please forgive me. You do not want to hear me speak French. But let me just say this right now. I'm probably going to accidentally slip into a French accent when pronouncing some of the things in this episode. So again, do not sue me. So anyway, let's get to Maryse Condé. So she was born on February 11th, 1934 on the island of Guadalupe. If you are not familiar with the island of Guadalupe, it's in the Caribbean. It was a French colony. I don't know what the official term is because it's like a protectorate or something. I don't know specifically, but understand it was colonized by the French. And that is where Maryse was born. You might know her because of her novels, her plays, her essays. She's another one of these outstanding writers who really has written in every single genre. The type of writing that Maryse does, however, she does follow, or I should say cover and explore similar themes in all of her work. She definitely explores racial, gender, post-colonial, colonial experience, and specifically writes about the African diaspora in the Caribbean, but not only in the Caribbean. She's written about Africa, like the diaspora in Africa, in the Caribbean, even in the United States. All of her books are written in French, but they have been translated into multiple languages. So I'm having so much fun doing the 10 fun facts about that I decided to try to keep doing that, what am I calling this? That format for these videos, because it makes it easier for me, and I think it might make it easier for you to retain all of this information instead of just going on and on about a person's entire bio. So let's begin. Fact number 1. Maryse Lilian Apollyon Boucolon. I told you this was terrible pronunciation. I can't help myself. But that was her given name. She was the youngest of 8 children, okay? And not only was she the youngest, oh, look at that sun, girl. I'm in the south of Spain. I hope this isn't distracting. Anyway, so she's the youngest of 8 kids, right? And not only is she the youngest, but there's an 11-year age gap between her next eldest sibling and herself. And her mother was 43 when she had her, and her father was 63. So Maryse often tells people that she grew up as a spoiled child. 1, because she was the youngest, and 2, because her parents were just too old to bother being too strict with her. They were like, oh my goodness, that always often happens with the youngest child. And Maryse often said that that's why she grew up very spoiled. Maryse, fun fact number 2, Maryse said she was started writing at an early age. She claimed to have written her first novel when she was 11, and she published her first play when she was also in that same range, younger than 12, and that play was a one-woman show that she wrote as a gift for her mother's birthday. All right, fun fact number 3. So again, she's born and raised on the island of Guadalupe, and she said that her parents never taught her about slavery. They didn't instill upon her any sense of like Black or African pride, but they then sent her to Paris for the last years of her high school education. When she was 16, she went to Paris, and she was shocked. Like, racism shocked her. Okay, she said she was woefully unprepared to deal with that level of racism. And she said, quote, in a Guardian article, "When I came to study in France, I discovered people's prejudices. People believed I was inferior just because I was Black. I had to prove to them that I was gifted and to show to everybody that the color of my skin didn't matter." Now, it doesn't really, unquote, it doesn't really say exactly how she proved these things, but she got expelled. I don't know what she was doing to prove how smart she was, but whatever it was, they didn't like it, and she was expelled. I'm saying she got expelled for being proud and Black, or maybe I should say she was expelled for being unapologetically Black and smart. Anyway, fun fact number 4. Maryse, remember I read her whole long name. She was obviously not born Maryse Condé. She acquired her last name, Condé, from marrying an actor from Guinea called, his name was Mamadou Condé. And they met in Paris and they got married in 1958. They had 3 children together before they actually separated in 1969. Yes. So, because she married a man from West Africa, she and her husband ended up going to West Africa in different countries. She was in Ghana, Guinea, and Senegal between the years of 1960 and 1972. And there she was hobnobbing with revolutionaries like Malcolm X and Che Guevara. And she's just learning a lot about Africa, about colonialism, about, the diaspora, politics. And she's getting kind of radicalized, not in any kind of, not in a specific political way, but she's really understanding, the information she did not learn as a child in Guadalupe from her parents, from her upbringing there. Now, again, and you'll see a theme here, Maryse was learning incorporating these different ideas from these different people who had different political ideas, and she's getting quite outspoken. So much so, repeat, she gets deported out of Ghana for her beliefs. And I'm not even going to get into what all of her politics were, but they didn't like her in Ghana. They deported her to London. I don't even understand that because she wasn't British, but she gets deported to London, and she is in London for a couple years and works for the BBC. Eventually, fun fact number 6, we're at 1975. So 1975, Maryse decides, you know what, I'm going to go back to school. She goes to school back in Paris. She gets a master's degree and a doctorate at the Sorbonne Nouvelle and in comparative literature. And her area of expertise is she's looking at Black stereotypes in Caribbean literature. So she finishes her doctorate. In 1976, Maryse publishes her first novel. And it is the title, I'm going to butcher the title. It's called Haramakonnen, which is actually a word for a specific language. I'm not sure from which country, but the story, if I tell you the storyline, you're going to be like, that sounds familiar. The story is about a Black Guadeloupean woman who learns from her family that French is the best system. And when she goes to Paris to continue her studies, she's told that she's really an African and she should go to Africa. When she goes to Africa, they're like, you're not really African. You should go to the Caribbean. And then she goes to the Caribbean and they're like, you're not really Caribbean. Sounds familiar, right? So she is, it sounds very autobiographical, but she says very specifically that this book was not autobiographical. In fact, it's the anti-moi, that the character is the anti-moi. I love that, the anti-moi. So anyway, the reason that this is important, that this book comes out in 1976, if you've been paying attention and keeping track, Maryse Condé was almost 40 when that novel came out. And she told The Guardian that she didn't publish a novel until this time. Remember, she wrote her first novel when she was 11, but it took her until she was almost 40 to put her work out into the world because she just lacked confidence. She said she didn't think that people would want to read her work. She didn't think she was allowed to. She really was still of that belief that literature was for white men. That's how deep these things go. But she did get her book out, and it was not a roaring success. Not at all. But at least it was out. In 1982, Maryse marries an English man named Richard Philcox. That's all I'm going to say about that marriage, but just remember that name. She marries this English man, a white English man named Richard Philcox. Remember that. It's going to come up later on the test. Next, in 1984, Maryse publishes her third novel. So in between her first novel and getting married, she publishes a second novel. It's fine, doesn't do much. But her third novel, that's the winner in 1984. It's called Segu. Again, I might be mispronouncing it, and it's actually S-E-G-O-U in French and S-E-G-U in English. But this is the book that launches Maryse's career for real. And Segu is about it's about let me see if I can say this right. It's about the Kingdom of Mali before colonization and what happens when colonization happens. We follow the story of one man and his offspring. What happens when you have Islam, Christianity, and colonization in one country. It's a bestseller. It wins all these awards. And again, it really puts Maryse Condé on the map of, famous Caribbean authors. Now, following the success of that book of Segu, we're now in 1985, she wins a bunch of awards, one of which is a Fulbright Award, which brings her to the United States to start teaching. Fun fact I don't remember what number we're on. But the point is, after Segu and after that Fulbright, her coming to the United States, that shifts her into an over 20-year period in the United States teaching at some very prestigious universities throughout the country. By 1995, she is teaching at Columbia University. She becomes a professor of French and Francophone literature, and she'll stay there all the way through till 2005. So 1995 to 2005, when she finally retires. But I just want to point out that while she's in the United States, again, she's there for a good long time, and she's teaching, she's learning. This is also where she writes my favorite Maryse Condé book, which is called Tituba, Black Witch of Salem. And again, this is why I said that her conversations, her stories, her interest in the African diaspora is Africa, it's the Caribbean, and it's even the United States. So I have my copy right here. Tituba, Black Witch of Salem actually is a story about the real life. The first woman who was actually accused of witchcraft in the United States was this Black woman named Tituba. And there's really very little about her that we know. So in the words of oh my God, I'm forgetting her name right now, but there's a term, it's called critical fabulation. Essentially, Maryse Condé had to take the little bit of documentation that from these court trials from Tituba and gives her a life in this story. I love this novel so much. Tituba, Black Witch of Salem. Of course, I will leave a link to that book in the show notes. This is not a podcast, Lori. In the description down below. Anyway, great book, and it's fascinating. And again, when you're like, this woman is from Guadalupe, educated in Paris, doesn't necessarily need to understand the American experience, but that book, you would not believe that this was not a quote unquote a Black American or somebody who had such a strong foundation in the American experience, because it's really set in Puritan times. And it's incredible. It's hard to believe, obviously I read the book in English, although I do have a copy in Spanish as well, but it's hard to believe that this book was written in French originally, but it was, as all Maryse's novels are. All right, so where are we? We are at, fun fact, on my list it says 11. It might not be 11, but anyway, we get to 2000. So she retires from Columbia in 2005, okay? In 2005, right before she retires, actually in 2004, she's awarded France's Legion of Honor in 2004, and she's also shortlisted for the Booker Prize for, I don't even know which book it was at that point, but get that she's literally still producing such good quality work, even at this point in her life, that she's shortlisted for the Booker Prize, okay? In 2018, we are at, fun fact, I'm saying 11, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But in 2018, Maryse Condé was awarded the new Academy Prize in Literature. Now, you've never heard of that because it was kind of created because apparently, I didn't remember this, but the Nobel Prize in Literature wasn't given out that year because there was some sex scandal. Yes, a sex scandal in the literature community. it was a sexual abuse scandal amongst the awards committee of the Nobel Prize for Literature. I want to back up and figure out what that was. But nonetheless, because Maryse was apparently up for the award, they wanted to give her the award, but there wasn't one given that year. So the new Academy Prize in Literature was given to Maryse Condé in 2018. All right, we are now at the end. So this is the thing. Maryse Condé developed a neurological degenerative disorder that stole her eyesight and also made it difficult for her to speak. But did that stop her from writing? No. She wrote her last novel called The Gospel According to the New World, and this was published in 2021, of course, written in French. It came out in English in 2023. The Gospel According to the New World is a novel that follows the journey of a baby rumored to be the child of God. I mean, don't you just want to pick that up right now? I mean, I think it sounds good, but don't take my word for it. The book was longlisted for the Booker Prize, okay? And she was 86 when she wrote that, which made her the oldest writer to ever be longlisted for the Booker Prize. Here's the fun part. Didn't you hear me say that she was blind? So she dictated that prize to her husband, Richard Philcox. Remember him? I told you to remember his name. He was her translator. Yeah, he translated almost all of her books once they got married. He was her official translator. So not only was she the oldest writer to be longlisted for the Booker Prize at 86 for that book, but they also were the first husband and wife author translator team to be longlisted for the Booker Prize and then shortlisted. So she didn't win, but they were shortlisted for that Booker Prize. That seems like an incredible feat for 86. And literally she was dying of this disease and it had robbed her eyesight, but she still managed to write, not just write a book, but an incredible book, a Booker Prize shortlist book, okay? That if that doesn't give you inspiration for how long you can continue writing and what has to stop you, it's pretty impressive. So Maryse Condé, incredible writer, does pass away from this neurological illness on April 2nd, 2024. By this time, she is living in the south of France with her husband. She was 90 years old. I thought this was a lovely quote to finish with a professor, Romuald Foncoua, who is a French literature professor at the Sorbonne. He's also a friend of Maryse Condé. He said this about her. He said, quote, "She wrote to give the world a glimpse of the faces of history that have until now not been shown, of landscapes that have been overlooked," unquote. I think that's powerful. Now, I want to just summarize by saying that Maryse Condé wrote over 20 books in her lifetime. She wrote novels, 2 memoirs, plays, essay collections. She even wrote children's books. So she was prolific and she was unafraid to try new things. She even wrote her own version of Wuthering Heights, set in Guadalupe. So she was a passionate writer, and I love this quote of hers. You know, this is her in her own words. She said about writing, she said, quote, writing has given me enormous joy. I would rather compare it to a compulsion, somewhat scary, whose cause I have never been able to unravel," unquote. It makes sense that this feels like a compulsion to her when you think about how much she has written. And like I said, I hope it gives so many of you listening the inspiration that she didn't publish her first novel until she was 40, even though she loved writing and she loved reading, but she lacked the confidence. So 1, don't lack the confidence, put your work out there. But 2, even if it takes you a while to gain the confidence to believe in yourself, it's never too late. She got a Booker nomination at 86, okay? And she was blind. So let that be your inspiration, because here's the only advice that I could find from Maryse Condé to young writers. She was actually interviewed by a writers organization, and they were like, Maryse, can you give us, what is your best advice for young aspiring writers? Her response, I don't have any advice. Maryse Condé was clearly a curmudgeon in certain ways, and it was like not playing by anybody's rules, not trying to be nice. Okay, that was not her vibe. But she said, quote, "No advice. Everyone should feel free to write and project his or her inner self," unquote. That's it. That's what she's given. That's what she's giving the young writers. And I love that. And I feel like that's what how she approached her own writing life. Some of her books, like her first novel, apparently was banned off of many shelves because people didn't like the stance that she took. I don't think Maryse Condé cared all that much. She cared about putting out her truth, her beliefs. Remember, she got expelled from high school. She got deported out of Ghana. She's like, listen, her first book was like banned off the shelves because of the political beliefs that she put in there. But she did what she wanted to do, and she said what she wanted to say, and she didn't really care what other people thought. I mean, I can't say that. Maybe she cared deeply, but she still was truthful to her own beliefs and her own ideas and her own desires. So take that as inspiration, especially my women writers. My women writers of color. Listen. Do not think that your voice, your ideas, your opinions don't matter. Your words will move mountains you don't even know. So put it out there. All right, that's today's incredible writer, Maryse Condé. She's got a lot of books, so you can go find the one that you really love. I highly recommend Tituba, Black Witch of Salem as a starter if you want, if that's your thing. I will be here tomorrow for another incredible story about an incredible writer or author who is Black and born in February. See you then.